Nope. All right. I will now call to order the Monday, December 5th, 2022 regular town council meeting. If you would please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First is the approval of a memorandum of the November 21st, 2022 regular town council meeting. A copy has been posted. Are there any questions from councilors?
Make a motion to approve.
First by Councilor Garrett, second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is the approval of the memorandum of the November 16th executive session. A copy of those minutes have also been posted. Are there any questions or discussion from councilors?
I just encourage the public to read the minutes.
Yeah, the minutes have essentially limited to attendees, and that's absolutely correct. That's a good point, Councilor Traylor. We fought long and hard to make sure we got this appropriate executive session called for by the mayor at her request, and she was not in attendance. I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum for the November 16th executive session.
Second.
Who was that second?
It
Second
was
by,
either one of us.
second by Councilor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is the approval of the December 5th, 2022 claims. Are there questions from councilors regarding the claims? I do have 2 questions. I see Cindy's here. Cindy, on the very last page in the, it looks like payroll, it says non-departmental, it just says direct deposit, PNC direct deposit for $370,000. Is that payroll direct deposit or is that just,
Roll direct deposit.
okay?
Yes.
And then the other question I had, there's a line item in the planning department that has $249 for prime car wash and detail. Do we typically use car wash and detail for our, is that something the town pays for?
It is. We used to do like monthly plans with all the vehicles with the crew car wash. And that's something I think that just kind of went by the wayside, but it is something that we've done in the past.
Okay, and that's budgeted for departments that use it and,
Mhm.
okay. All right, fair enough. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions from councilors? I'll make a motion to approve claims.
Second.
Second by Councilor Traylor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next would be requests to speak on agenda items. Amy, do we have any requests to speak on agenda items? Very good. Up next would be mayor administration update. I did not get an update from the mayor or the administration in the packet. Up next would be town council update. Are there any updates from councilors?
Yes, I've got a few, so forgive me. And this may be partially update, partially asking for an update. I'll start with at our last finance committee meeting, our CFO, former CFO at this point, had brought up that there were some additional appropriations that needed to be done by December 15th. I know that she has departed at this point for another job. But my question is that she said it needed to be done by the 15th. Is that something we need to worry about? I'm getting a head shake no. Can I get any further? Because it was like $3.2 million of additional appropriations that, okay.
We've gone through
I'm sorry, can you just real
oh,
quick?
I'm sorry, Tim Berry with Crow. The administration asked me to work with the finance department to review those requests. And we did that. We cleaned those up. There will be an additional appropriation at the 19th meeting. It will be much smaller than that. And there will be some transfers at that point in time. But we spoke with Department of Local Government Finance, and they just said to make sure that they were done in this calendar year.
Okay. All right.
They preferred them to be done by the 15th, but we wanted to make sure that they were correct, and there were quite a few changes that were necessary based on that review.
Okay, that was my only concern, was getting it done in that time frame. But yep. All right, if we've got a little.
We just real quick need to make sure, Tim, as you're aware, we need to make sure we have that the Monday before the 19th meeting. So
those were presented today to Amy to advertise, and that will all be included in the board packet.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I've got another item here. So this one may be news to, may even be news to some of the folks on the council, but we have an insurance claim that is outstanding for the town for legal expenses of our fire chief as related to the mayor's lawsuits against the council. The total of the claim is $82,082 and was submitted to the town on September 1st. It is, in my opinion, it's gone on far too long without getting an answer to the claim. So I'm asking, and I know there's not really anybody from the administration that can do this, but I'm asking, nobody here from the administration that can do this, but I'm asking for some extra pressure from the administration be put on the insurance carrier for this. Also, I know our agent is in the audience tonight, and I appreciate everything he's done. This has no bearing on his service to the town. However, I think that perhaps we should look into potentially a new carrier if we can't get claims paid in a timely manner. So that may be something we need to look at, because I've grown incredibly frustrated with the process. I can't imagine the chief himself, who has the liability out there of over $80,000 that's been a claim for over 90 days now. So I was hoping for an update from the administration, but neither the mayor nor deputy mayor are here. If anybody else has an update, I'd welcome them to come up and give it. No update? Okay. So I want to put that on the record that we need to get some resolution to that. I fear that if we don't, it's going to be far worse for the town than the existing claim is.
I would just briefly, as I pull this up here, just share with you, Councilor Traylor, and even any other councilor that has interest in it, and certainly the public. I have been in communication with our agent dating back to September 22nd, where I requested an update on that claim status as well. That has not, the company handling the claim has not communicated with me. I've requested that multiple times, and was told that we believe the insurance carrier to have been in continuous communication with the town's attorneys. I shared with them that they have not been in continuous communication with the town council attorney or the town council leadership, which would lead me to believe that they have been in communication with the mayor's attorneys about this particular claim. So I don't know.
Is this something we could potentially pay and use the insurance claim money as reimbursement? Because it can only go on so long before people take other action.
Yeah, my fear is that it, to your point, it drags on and we open ourselves up to additional litigation.
Yeah.
The fact of the matter is the claim has been submitted. I don't understand the holdup. I don't understand why it's not. No one has asked me any information. No one's spoken with Heather. No one's spoken with Mark Cranley, the attorney who helped us litigate. So they have not been in communication with town council attorneys, and my most recent communication with the insurance agent was last Wednesday and then again today. So we're trying to move it along as quickly as we can and get it done. But again, to your point, I don't know what else to do now other than to continue to get updates from or request updates from either the mayor's legal team or from the insurance company that underwrote the contract.
Councilor, I was just going to say that I will check with the State Board of Accounts to see what other options there are for payment outside of the insurer. Typically, the insurer is reimbursing the town, so we do want to continue to have pressure on the insurer to pay that claim, so the town can get reimbursed for that, payment. And then the other piece that I would say is I'll also send a note. I have previously, and this has been some time ago, but I'll send a follow-up to Amy Nooning to see if she has any status reports, and I'll send that this evening in writing.
And maybe also if you could, I tried to look this up and I couldn't find anything on it, but I was trying to look up what the statutory limit is for how long it can take to pay out a claim, or at least to decision it. The only thing I could find said 30 days, but that can't be right considering we're at 90 plus days now.
From the property casualty insurer, I'll find that out too.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you CC
Sure
the
will.
council or on that? Thank you, Heather.
And if you don't mind, I told you I had a few. My last update is I'm as a member of the finance committee, and town council, obviously, we received word that Kelly Adams had resigned as our CFO. And I just wanted to, on my behalf, and I believe on the behalf of the town council, thank Kelly for her service to the town. It's greatly appreciated, and I completely understand her departure. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Yeah.
one other thing, I'd asked for an update from the administration on the Gateway project. I've been to our last 3 meetings. Do you know if they're planning to show up to a meeting and give said update?
I do not have that information.
Okay.
I guess to add to Councilor Trailer's comments, and he said he understands. I don't know that I really understand. I got an email today that Kelly had resigned her position, and I know that's not, maybe that's worthy of a phone call to help answer questions or take questions from me to kind of better understand what that means or what the next steps are. Clearly, there are a number of financial concerns that we're still trying to address and that Kelly was working through. And now we no longer have a CFO. I don't know what next steps are. I thought maybe someone might present tonight. And again, not to explain why she left. That's kind of really, I guess, her own opinion. I haven't spoken with her, but just to help calm us on like, here's where we are in the middle of almost a crisis situation with the town's finances of helping build some support for or help us feel like things are on the right track. And here's how things are going to progress moving forward. So hopefully that will come. I don't know that it will. An explanation or even what next steps are going to be. I thought that might be a communication that would happen tonight. So I don't know why she's gone. I don't know if it makes sense why she's gone. But I think I'm eagerly anticipating some communication to help me better understand what I can expect as we try to clear out the year. There's a lot of items that are still coming before this council, and many of them tonight that I was counting on Kelly to help explain what our best path forward is. So it's just a little frustrating that this is how news like this is breaking to this council.
Just to clarify a little bit, when I say I understand, I don't know Kelly's exact reason for her resignation, but what I do know is I witnessed her being treated in a manner that no employee of this town should be by her direct boss. And if that played into it, I do not blame her one bit.
I guess I got my question. I mean, who would want that job? I mean, I'm not kidding. This is a hot mess. I mean, we have to write a check at some point or, approve it for the original software, correct? Before the end of the year?
I don't have an update on the old software system.
Okay.
Per the finance committee, the last I heard was that the intention is to go live with Keystone on January 3rd for anything 2023 forward. It would not complete the transfer from the old system because they still have to get all the old information into the new system. But it's kind of like, okay, starting January 3rd, everything would go into Keystone so that we have going forward, we start with a fresh year. But I don't know if that's still the intention.
Well, who's responsible for that now?
Good question.
So, I mean, if we're the ones that approve these types of things and we have no CFO and this is still a mess, you would think we get some sort of update. And as a lot of people can attest to, I've been right down the middle for all these things. I've been fair to both sides, and I'm just trying to figure out for our town what the heck we're supposed to do. This is like really bad. This is now the third direct report that the mayor's lost in less than a year. I mean, this is a real problem, folks. I mean, people that are watching online and in this audience, that's a real problem for this town. And I'm not just making this up. I mean, we sat through a meeting last week to go through this. And Mayor didn't even show up. She called it. This is, and just so everybody knows, we moved our Monday meetings to 8 a.m. in the middle of the month for the mayor. I have not seen her there in months. And she's not here tonight either. She hasn't been here in over a month. So, people need to hear this. This is a real problem. I'm sorry, but I can't take anymore.
I appreciate it.
That's the most worthless meeting I've ever been in my life last week. So
My concern right now is with her departure, again, just like last time we were in transition, all this work fell on Cindy, who does an incredible job, but now she's doing the work of two people. And Cindy, I don't know how long you can take that. So I have fear for Cindy as a person, as an employee of this town, because it's not a big department, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I think I've said for years now in this position, or at least the last year, I should say, that I believe this council, our number one priority is to operate in the fiscal capacity for the town of Zionsville. And we have time and time again said that whatever the finance department needs, we would be willing to support and we would be willing to move forward with, obviously within reason and such. And yeah, I would echo those sentiments now. Now more than ever, whatever we've got to get for the finance department. I don't know if that just means Tim Crow has a bigger role to play, or Cindy, you guys decide you need more staff, or I don't know the answer, but I think this council is open to understanding what is truly needed. I thought we were getting a lot of that with Kelly, and there was a lot of transparency and open dialogue about it. And I would just say the same thing moving forward. Like, we need to make sure we know what's going on so we can help. So, any other updates from councilors? Up next is first item on old business. This is a consideration of an ordinance establishing the compensation to be paid to officials as employees of the town of Zionsville, Indiana for calendar year 2023. This is ordinance 2022-24. We have Joe Keel here, and HR Director Joe Keel, I should say. And this is, councilors, this is for discussion. We've decided there's a lot of questions about the salary ordinance. Instead of moving forward with a vote tonight, there is no vote. This is going to be a discussion to better understand what's going on with the salary ordinance. So, Joe, is there anything you want to start this off with? I know Heather and I had talked about a few different things, but I'm certainly open to whatever you have prepared.
No, I'm here to answer questions. Yes, Heather and I had a brief conversation about some regulatory updates that need to take place. I think that's the term. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Heather, do you want to?
Yeah, I can give kind of a summary. So I did just briefly have a chance to talk to Joe, and we're going to try to talk either tomorrow or Wednesday in more detail and kind of look through this. I also have a request in to try to get a little bit of additional information on one item from the State Board of Accounts. And Tim, I'll talk to you too, that I was reading through. So this is a format, just in fairness to Joe, that has been used for several years. And there's been some changes, as well as I think what we continue to see is we need to overlay our reorganization document. So we had a little bit of discussion prior to when we got to this point about the salary ordinance. In our reorganization document, it specifically states that the mayor shall present the compensation for the town employees prior to November 1st. That is different than the normal requirement for towns. So cities have the requirement to present these, salary ordinances prior to November 1st, but towns traditionally do not. They have until the end of the year. So we've modeled in the reorganization language the same requirement as cities. And so that's something we just need to recognize, and on a go forward basis, we need to make sure we're baking in the time to have this task completed when we're completing the budget, making sure that aligns more closely. So I have that. Additionally, in 2019, the legislature made a change to the statute for town elected officials, and it basically stated that certain things could not be used to calculate your compensation. In my research, it looked like there had been a question about maybe centered around a mayoral appointment about whether or not someone's compensation included certain benefits that they were provided, because there was a cap in the ordinance on total compensation, or your defined compensation as it's commonly referenced. And so the legislature came in and they excluded certain things. For example, you have to exclude a payment of an insurance premium. So if the town is paying a portion of your insurance premium, town council doesn't get obviously insurance through the town, but the mayor would, and it would also apply, in my opinion, to the town judge who's also elected. And then there's also other payments that are given. I don't think any of these are really applicable currently to the town council or to the mayor, but may include things like longevity pay, education attainment, things that you've accomplished in terms of professional certifications. Then lastly, or there's two others, payment of a stipend or per diem. In some instances, in some communities, you get a per diem for each meeting you attend in addition to your base compensation. We don't do that here, but some towns also give like a stipend if you're on the solid waste board, for example, just because of the time and effort it takes to be on that particular board. And then a payment authorized, by statute, which is something in the ordinance. One thing I think it does apply to is for a town council president, you get additional compensation. It is something authorized by statute, embedded in our ordinance. So I don't think that should be calculated in the number that we list for the town council president's role. Really should just be the base salary, and then other benefits you would just list what those are specifically. So I think we need to go back and just double check this. This is the question I have to the State Board of Accounts, and I'll talk to Tim about as well, just to make sure we're calculating it and reflecting it correctly. Again, it only applies to the town elected officials. And then there's a couple of other things in here that I noticed as well. For example, we've always referenced new positions that are being created. There's some language in the State Board of Accounts, as well as in statute, that talks about you have to approve the job descriptions of any new positions being created in the town. Since you're funding those positions, you need to have something to say what those positions will do. In this, we really only have their titles and then the proposed amount. That is a little tricky. That's my second part of my question to the State Board of Accounts, because we have our reorganization and the mayor's in charge of, creating and overseeing certain positions. I just need to get some clarity. Sometimes we don't squarely fit, into the statute. We have to look at both documents. And then we also have always referenced our employee handbook, which includes things like the calculation of paid time off, how benefits accrue. And when I look back at that language, it says that it needs to be specifically included. And there was some commentary that it needs to be delineated in the actual ordinance itself and not cross-referencing another document. Joe's included most of that. It's like mostly there because she's got a number of those items already included that show, for example, like longevity pay or other kinds of stipends that people might get if you're a K-9 officer, I think, for example. So it just may be a sort of reformatting of where they sit within the document. But I do think looking at some other towns and surrounding communities, they do specifically embed them very specifically in the statute. The other thing that it talked about is that the town needs to actually approve the benefits package for employees with some specificity. I think we just have sort of what it's going to cost and, you know, kind of what the general benefits are. So I just need to look at it a little bit more, talk with Joe. I've gone through the State Board of Accounts handbook. There's also some questions I see, Jared, in the audience around compensation for the Parks Board and the employees of the Parks Board. And there's a pullout in state statute that talks about how compensation is set for those individuals. And in our reorg, it also does say it's a separate entity. So there may be a little bit of separation we need to do for the Parks Board. I think it can be in the same document, but we need to also maybe make sure that on a go forward basis that they're improving the compensation for the Parks Board officers at the Parks Board level and then making a recommendation. So we'll clean this up as it goes forward. Sorry for my voice, but we'll get together on that if there's questions. I've kind of redlined it, but I just want to check a couple things with the State Board of Accounts before we move forward.
And Heather, just to clarify, what you're talking about there are sort of legal technical cleanups. It's not changing the I don't want to say merits, it's the wrong word, but basically what was the budget in terms of the raises for the employees, longevity pay, things like that. We're just making sure that the legalese is correct. We're not rolling back things that we've already
Correct,
voted
right.
on. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it says when the salary ordinance in our reorganization document, it states that when the salary ordinance comes forward for the employees of the town council may decrease but may not increase the recommendations from the mayor or the administration. With respect to elected officials, those have to stay stagnant through the year. So they can't increase or decrease once we set them. For other employees, you can bring forward recommendations, for example, to change or amend the salary ordinance. So again, we've got some nuances with our reorganization, but it does not impact what we budgeted for in terms of compensation.
Got it.
And what Joe's presented and the administration's presented. Clear as mud.
So do you think this would be something that would be able to be approved at the next meeting?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I think we're really close and just sitting down with Joe now. It's there's some things that we haven't traditionally done, you know, in terms of the nitty gritty on job descriptions. For example, we've created positions and we funded positions. And, you know, it's, to me, there's language in the reorganization that states that the mayor, you know, should be responsible for sort of the management of her employees. That does get a little tricky sometimes when you talk to the State Board of Accounts or the LGF, because they look at it very like black or white, cities in this bucket, towns in this bucket, and we're just so different. So, you know, I think there may be a workaround there. So we're not in the weeds on every, you know, detail and nuance of all of these positions, but I do think we need to pull them out at least separately from the ordinance. I think we can reference these new positions, but there's some of the language is embedded in the commentary, like the whereas clauses, and it actually isn't in the actual body of the ordinance. So the whereas clauses are just for context, you know, for the public and others to understand why we're making the changes. We need to move that down into the body of the ordinance. So when you actually pass the salary ordinance, you are actually setting the policy for the town or approving the actual positions, if that makes sense. So just kind of placement in the document.
So you're working with Joe on that then, correct? And then you'll
And I'll probably
disseminate that
also
information
connect
to
with
us.
Jared and Amy. I'll probably just send something to all three of them tomorrow so that we're all on the same page and see if we can arrange a call. I do want to involve Amy Nooning as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is a great example of, you know, this 2023 budget and why we need to clean up ordinances and resolutions, and, you know, so I'm glad that we're taking time to do this now for sure.
And can I make a couple of comments on this too? So I think, given that it's salary ordinance time, it gives us a great opportunity with the recent resignation of our CFO. We've got to really, it's kind of like things fell at the right time to take advantage and correct some wrongs that have been made. I would like to see the CFO position removed from the salary ordinance and reinstitute a department head of finance similar to what we had before, which was more of a clerk position, not a CFO role. You look at where we started and you look at where we went and where we are now. We started off with a clerk. I say clerk, but a clerk type of position. That's the type of role it was. So we started off with a clerk type of role, Crow as our financial advisors, and Keystone as our system. Now we've totally unraveled that, screwed it all up, and we are getting back to where we started. And this is the one piece that's remaining, because we have Crow back, which is awesome. We have Keystone back, which I think is going to be a huge benefit. And now if we can get back to that clerk type role, which was at that point, it was called the department head of finance and records. But if we can get back to, and I don't think that, I looked at the old job description, that old job description won't exactly fit today, but I think a lot of it will. And if we can, so I'd like, long story short, I'll get back down to the nuts and bolts of it. I'd like to see that CFO title removed from the salary ordinance and replaced with a department head of finance. I would also like to see the elimination of the procurement and fleet services position until, at least until such time as we get a department head that can make a decision whether that's a good idea or not.
I fully support both of those changes as well.
Joe, how many new positions are in the salary ordinance that we just have title for and we haven't, to Heather's point, haven't seen and approved job descriptions?
We have job descriptions for all of them. So I would get unique jobs. I think there's 6.
I can read them if you'd like. So there's in the Parks and Recreation Department, they're creating the position titles of recreational coordinator, seasonal recreation assistant, and natural resource tech. I don't know from the way it's drafted if they're new positions or they're just updating title, which is what it looks like.
They're updating titles.
And compensation associated with that role. And then same for community economic development and planning. They're also changing the naming convention for planner 1 and creating the position titles of assistant planner, associate planner, and senior planner. So kind of differentiating out those roles within the department.
But when you say position titles, these are people that are currently working here. That's just they're getting a different title, or
Correct.
new employees.
The first one, they're existing employees that the title is just changing.
And we just haven't approved the job description for the new title.
You have, while I've been here, you have never approved a job description to my knowledge. And so no, those were not presented.
Okay. But you're saying, Heather, that we need to.
We do. I mean, we do.
I mean, it's
I don't know if
housekeeping,
we
right?
need
It's
to
cleaned up,
do,
so.
I
Yeah.
think what we need to be doing at a minimum is not just embedding him. I don't know that we should be embedding the creation of new positions in the salary ordinance. So really the salary ordinance is funding positions that have been created. So I think it might be more appropriate to have, an ordinance that creates these positions or changes the naming convention. And this really should be focused on the compensation. That's the way I read it. It doesn't mean that I don't know the answer yet if we should be approving job descriptions based on the language in the reorg. So I do want to seek some clarification on that, but that seems to be when I look at our, sort of similarly situated communities, they're not including those positions within the salary ordinance. They're separately documenting and improving them each time a new position is created or a new title that has new title and or differentiated compensation.
It makes sense to separate it from the comp motion that we move. Doesn't mean we're not going to do it. It's just a way of better clarifying and breaking it apart. So there's more transparency in creating the positions separately. And then passing the salary ordinance to correspond with the new positions, and all these are getting raises, I'm assuming, right? They're all these new titles are a bump in pay.
And I don't think for the town, no one should panic that if they're in this role. I mean, I think that we could get those ready if we need to do them separately, and that's the advice of the State Board of Accounts. I mean, we can get them ready for the next meeting as well and have them, adopted in a two-step process. I don't think those positions need to be advertised. The compensation certainly does, because we're spending money, but not the positions.
Yeah, I'm in no way is that expressing any opposition to it. It's just keeping it clean so that the State Board of Accounts is happy with how we are being transparent and not just packaging it all in one omnibus package.
And now you all know how exciting my life is. I've been reading the State Board of Accounts manual. So.
I have another question. And this goes to like change in administration. So when, like for the next administration, assuming, or if it ends up being a different mayor and different deputy mayor, do their salaries reset, or do they go from based on what's in the salary ordinance and just carry over to that's now their salary?
So as I understand it, town council sets the mayor's salary, and then the mayor supervises the deputy mayor and would set that salary.
But I don't think we can
Which isn't
decrease the mayor's salary.
necessarily,
And then we approve the
Through-
salary ordinance.
Mhm.
So my question is, and where this is coming from is and I'm not trying to do anything crazy. What I'm thinking about is as it currently sits in this salary ordinance, our deputy mayor will be making about $8,000 a year more than our mayor. And I just think if that continues to spread year after year, we're eventually going to get to a position, and it may already be there. We're eventually going to get to a position where that deputy mayor's position is more coveted than the mayor's position. How do we avoid that? Because maybe it's just me, but philosophically, I just don't think our deputy mayor should make more than the mayor.
well, I agree, hierarchy of
Yeah.
things. That position would max out at a point, and that position is a lower pay grade than the mayor.
I think they're the same pay grade based on the bands that we got last year. I think they're in the
I'd have
same.
to double check, but I'm pretty sure they're not. But like I said, I'll check. And you're setting the salary for the mayor, so you could rectify
I'm not
that.
going to give the mayor a raise.
No, not any mayor.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I think the answer is, the reorganization sets a floor for compensation of the mayor at $105,000. The town council sets the salary for the mayor. So, technically, you just can't go under a reorg under 105. So you could reset, and oftentimes that's what happens in state government. For example, an elected official like the governor has a statutorily set salary in statute, and that can't change. And so they will have department heads, for example, that make more. There was just an IBJ article a couple weeks ago that published the salaries of 3 key department heads who are all physicians, who make double what the mayor makes in their current roles. So we do see that. We do see that as people have longevity in a role that's, underneath the mayor. It may be worthwhile. I don't know if we ever really did this. We talked about it at one point, but what I find is elected officials don't typically like to give themselves a pay increase. That's not, generally popular with constituents, but I don't know that we've looked at kind of the salaries of these positions for a long time. And some of the stipends that I was mentioning for work outside of the council, for example, a lot of councils are paying for the solid waste representative because those meetings are lengthy and there's, typically a lot of work that is required to be an active participant, within that organization. So that's a pretty typical one. But
Wouldn't we have to include some language if we did that though? Because
we would
you
need to
know.
update the ordinance, which needs desperately updated regardless, just because we still are referencing old positions like town marshal and.
Well, I'm just thinking our two representatives, for example, on that particular district or the solid waste district are counselors.
Yeah, and most of
So-
them are counselors, like most counselors get a stipend for participation is what I'm saying, similar to how the legislature has put language in to allow for differentiated comps for different roles that members play based on the time and effort in which, it takes to do the job. So, I mean, I don't know that that's the right answer. I just don't know that we've benchmarked it. We've started to look at it with respect to our employees, which
2
is
years
why.
ago, we did. It was
Yeah.
included,
That's how we got the bands, right? I mean, we went around and
and it was included.
So I guess my point is I would like to either know that at the time of a transition of administration, we have a reset clause or maybe we cap the deputy mayor, what the mayor salary is. I don't know. But I just like something in place so that we don't have a long-term plan or a long-term issue of, we get down the road 10 years and the deputy mayor's making twice as much as the mayor. I just don't think that would be
Sure.
a position we want to be in.
Yeah, I think we could accomplish that by ordinance, maybe worthwhile seeing what some other, similar communities do. And kind of going back, in terms of the market for the job.
And I'm not, just for the record, I'm not speaking of the individuals in the role now. I'm just talking about the positions themselves, how I think they should be structured.
any other questions or comments from counselors?
I guess just when Counselor Traylor talked about taking out those two roles, is that something that's going to be done? Are there any counselors that are opposed to that? Is that something we should expect to see when we vote on this at next meeting, or do we need to make is it going to stay as is minus whatever tweaks you make, and it would just have to be a motion and a vote based on that?
Yeah, and maybe I wrote that down, and I may want to look at it in terms of it may not be an issue if you're changing the title. It probably is an issue if you're changing the comp and just looking at the department structure in total. I know that Joe, you've been working to try to get some alignment, which I think is why some of these other new positions are created. Like you have, assistant planner and planner one, so you have more defined roles within, the organization. So I'll just need to take a look at it. We do have for the position of chief financial officer an ordinance that we would need to revise, which we certainly can. It's something that the council created, and it created that position, and it transferred the duties of the clerk treasurer, some of which went to the mayor and some of which went to the CFO position. So we would need to, what happens in the reorg is that the duties of the clerk treasurer are transferred to the mayor. We initially set it up that then the sort of traditional clerk duties, which a town would normally have, which is, what you're talking about, Counselor Traylor, would then transfer to the director of the Department of Finance and Records. And then in our convoluted way, when we created the new position, Chief Financial Officer, we took the duties of the Department of Finance and Records and then transferred them to the CFO, and then created other responsibilities in addition to those clerk responsibilities. So we would need to unwind that a bit.
Let me interrupt you. I'm sorry, but I want to make sure that make a point that this, I spent some time on this, on all of this today. But the change from Director of Finance and Records to CFO happened in a salary ordinance.
It's in a salary ordinance, but then I think we also had a separate document, if I'm not mistaken. We created the position like
Okay.
we are here, like where I was talking. And I think we did go back and change the ordinance though that created the transfer, the duties from the mayor to the Department of Finance and Records. Some of them were delineated to the deputy mayor, some of them were delineated, and I believe we did that. It's probably been like 2016. It's quite a long time ago.
Okay.
But I do think we fund, I know when Tammy came in, I guess when was that? I guess it's not been that
2020.
long ago, 2020. Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, and that in 2020 is when we had the salary ordinance that I found that was similar to the change in job titles that we have in this salary ordinance. And it was a title change from Director of Finance and Records to CFO. And as we're talking about all this, when we do change back to the Director of Finance and Records, I would like for the salary recommendation to be along the lines of what that role would be rather than a CFO.
We can check. I believe we did have to approve that as a council, and probably showed up again in the salary ordinance just as a way to confirm the difference in pay. To your question, I don't know that I'm opposed to it or not. It's obviously, something that's just kind of being brought up tonight. I'd really like to talk to some folks and get my hands around what are the pros and cons to the title. I mean, if it's just a title, but I mean, just getting my hands around what are the job responsibilities, and what would be the pay level for that job, and can we attract the talent to concerns we all have? I mean, we need to get the right folks in the right roles in this town. And I don't want that to be a barrier to getting the right person. So I'm not opposed to what you're trying to do. I mean, I think we need to get it clean and get it clear.
Yeah.
But there were good reasons on why we were not just changing the title, but essentially those were presented as trying to professionalize that position to bring a higher level. And that didn't get realized, but that doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Maybe we just didn't, get the efficiencies and the professionalism we were hoping for.
We do not have an administration that has the government finance experience to manage a CFO. We need to lean on Crow for those types of skills and go back to the clerk position. I'm not saying that a future administration can't propose a CFO and move that direction. I'm just saying this one can't handle it, and they've proven that.
So the question that I would have, two questions. One would be if when this comes back and it's cleaned up, language is cleaned up, whatever, and this still has CFO in there. Would we make a motion to approve it and redline that CFO out at the next meeting? Or should we just say, listen, let's just have that prepared
I think
now?
you could do that. That is an option, or you could change the title of the position. You could decrease the amount of compensation. You can't increase it per our reorganization document. Or you can always come back and amend it in a salary ordinance amendment at a later time and go, kind of unwind the rest. And I did confirm. So the other thing interesting about our code is it doesn't have all the ordinances that we've passed since 2020. So I think part of that was because of the pandemic. Like there was that weird time when they weren't getting them uploaded into our system. So if you go into our code of ordinances in, I think, chapter 30, for example, it creates a position of deputy mayor, but it still has the position of the town manager. I mean, there's just a lot of inconsistencies, but we did by ordinance in 2020. We actually did it at the end of 2019, I think. We started this process, and then, so Councilor Traylor, you're right. In ordinance number 2019-23 on November 24, 2019, we did the calendar year salary ordinance for all the employees, and it included the funding of a position, I think. And then we created by ordinance new positions in ordinance 2020-03, which created the position of chief financial officer, and then amended the salary ordinance to change and reflect the new title. So I'll send this to the full council and to Amy, just so you can post it publicly for the minutes. But
my question is to Councilor Traylor, what is the objective in the change? And then to our attorney, is director of finance still going to be the head of a department?
It was the head of a department prior to.
Okay.
So we would just have to make that clear. I do think we would have to go back and amend ordinance 2020-03, and then we would have to revert back to the language we had previously, which was that the director of finance was vested in the clerk treasurer duties that were transferred from the town council president to the mayor as part of the reorg. So
Yeah, and with the clerk type role, the department heads are more actively involved in their own financial pictures, so their own reporting, things like that. Now it goes to the finance department, but they are, rather than the CFO having all of this control. And I think having a CFO under this administration has to date done nothing but cause problems. Now that's no reflection on our last CFO, because I think she was doing her best to try to get us turned around. And unfortunately, she decided that she had to move on. But I think it takes a lot of the full authority away from an individual. And like I said, a CFO role is a high, that's a high skill set that somebody should have, and we don't have anybody in our town that has the skill set to manage somebody like that.
So if the role of clerk treasurer went to the mayor through the reorg, I mean, it seems like is that the breakdown here, where
So-
we're supposed to have a financial wherewithal within the clerk treasurer or the mayor's position?
The reorg transferred the clerk treasurer duties to the head of the Department of Finance. You have to explain why the role or the elected position of clerk treasurer was transferred to the mayor, because that gets a little over my head.
yeah, so under the reorganization statute, a traditional town, just if we did not have a reorganization, would have a town council president and a town council, and the town council president as an individual would be vested with certain executive powers. For example, they would be responsible for managing all of the employees of the town and then bringing forward the salary ordinance and the budget recommendations to the full town council, for example. So we have that piece, which is executive functions. And then the town council was always the fiscal body, the legislative body of the town. There's traditionally a clerk treasurer in a traditional town structure, which is responsible for the financial management of the town, kind of the check and balance to the town council president to make sure, that things are receipted properly and that you do your budget with the state board of accounts. So your internal, check and balance on power. So in the reorganization document, it requires in the reorganization statute, says if you're going to reorganize, you cannot create new positions. You actually have to eliminate an elected position. So you just can't change the title, because the whole premise of the Government Modernization Act was to reduce the number of elected officials and reduce the size of government, create efficiencies in government. So they're not going to want you to just create a new position with the same title. So the reorganization document actually takes the executive power of the town council president and the financial power of the town clerk and transfers them to the position of mayor. Then by ordinance or by ordinance in ordinance number 2014-11, which is our reorganization 2.0, we transfer by local ordinance, by local policy, the duties of the clerk treasurer from the mayor to the director of the Department of Finance and Records. So we didn't create a new position. We took some duties that we gave to the elected official and created a check and balance within that department is really the intention. And then when we created the position of CFO, we transferred the duties that had been transferred from the mayor to the director of the Department of Finance and Records, and then gave them to the CFO. So it all works in legalese, but it's a little complicated. But effectively what it did is transfer the financial powers of the oversight powers to the CFO position.
So Heather, what's the check and balance when, whether it's CFO or director of finance reporting to the executive, you don't really have a check and balance. The only check and balance is the town council
That's
as fiscal
correct.
body.
Yeah, the town council. I mean, that's the town council is the official check and balance in the structure.
So I think the only thing I would like to know, and I don't know how we do it, is to find out if this is a process that we go through and we do eliminate that CFO position. How much is it going to cost us to have Crow come in and do what they were doing 3 years ago, right? I mean, that's something we would have to.
I bet we're paying it now.
In the salaries.
I bet we're paying it right now. I mean, because I can't imagine the number of hours Crow is spending trying to untangle this web.
I would suspect the same. I would suspect the duties of our outside advisor, whether it was Crow or former advisor, have not changed. They've been largely unchanged. I mean, where they get into specialty work is if we're doing a bond financing or something else, but the routine day-to-day work of our outside financial advisor has largely been the same since my involvement with the town, which has now been a long time.
All right. Any other questions, comments for Joe or Heather?
I just want to thank Joe for your patience with us. We
No
got
problem.
we got a lot of ass right now. Sorry.
Not a problem.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Joe. Appreciate it. Up first on new business is consideration of an ordinance vacating portions of public right-of-way. This is Holiday Farms, ordinance 2022-29, and we have Janice to present.
Hi, Janice Stavanovich, Planning Manager, Community and Economic Development for the town of Zionsville. Staff has provided Town Council with an ordinance and a memo regarding the request, which is execution of the ordinance to vacate two 10-foot drainage easements located on either side of the shared property line of parcels F32 and F33 in Section 2 of the Holiday Farms subdivisions. I'll briefly read through the memo just for the record. At the November 21st, 2022 Town Council meeting, the council approved the vacation of two drainage easements, each being 10 feet in width, located on each side of the shared lot line between lots 32 and 33 within the Holiday Farms subdivision. The ordinance presented to you today is to memorialize the approval of that meeting. Additional information is that at the evening meeting, November 21st, the Plan Commission did approve the petition to remove the adjoining lot line between the parcels, allowing for the lots to merge. The next steps after its execution of the ordinance is recordation of the replat. Again, we're asking for execution of the ordinance. Happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Janice? I would just say, Janice, again, I really appreciate the memo here outlining everything. It's incredibly helpful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from counselors?
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
First by Counselor Garrett, second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those favors are opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. Up next is consideration of an ordinance amending the 2023 non-DLGF budget. This is ordinance 2022-30. This is first reading. We have Cindy to present.
Good evening, Cindy Poor, Deputy Chief Financial Officer. I believe this was presented at the last meeting. However, there were a couple of items that were unintentionally left out. And so this copy that you have should reflect the highlighted in yellow, the three funds that did not originally have amounts appropriated to them. And I can tell you what those funds were if you need to know.
These are the ones that are highlighted, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, would you just, for the public, since they don't have access to this, would you mind just
Sure.
firing those off? Please.
Fund 403, that's the Park Non-Reverting Capital Fund. We usually, even though it's a non-DLGF fund, we try to budget out of that every year for the upcoming projects that they have. The other two funds, let's see, I think it's 641 is a wastewater bond. And this is where the payment comes from for that bond. And same with the fund number 643, if I could get the paper to change here. Yes, 643. That is also a wastewater bond, and this is just the appropriation of the payment that needs to be made.
Are there any questions from counselors for Cindy?
Not specific about the numbers, but just a general question. And it may not be for Cindy, it may be really more directed towards the council or the mayor. But with the audit findings we had, I think it was proposed that we should be doing the non-DLGF and the DLGF as one budget. So my assumption is this will be the last year we see separate budgets.
Correct, yes.
Just want to make sure that that's still the intention.
And I
Okay.
think the intent there is to amend the non-DLGF budget because we did pass them as two separate documents. So the language wouldn't be included in the town budget with tax supported funds.
Okay.
And then I believe that this is all money that's already been budgeted and noticed publicly. We're just now spending the money. Is that a correct assumption? That there's no new money? that would be-
No new money, no.
Yes, okay.
Mm.
So this was already budgeted.
No, this is the budget that was presented for next year.
The 2020, so the 2020.
This is
so what we're-
2022 and
So the
2023.
modifications are the ones that are
Right, okay.
highlighted, just at different amounts than we had originally approved?
Right, like
or-
Fund 403 wasn't even listed last time. And so the same, I believe is the same with 641 and 643. They were unintentionally left off when it was initially presented. So this amendment is to include those three funds.
So I need to restate that then, because when I read it, I actually was right the first time, so it makes me feel good. So this is actually, we actually don't have a non-DLGF budget. So to your question, since this is for 2023, I just read that backwards. Do we need to amend the title? I mean, this is a first reading, so we'll have it back right at our next. So we may need to amend the title to reflect the correct title, since we did not separate out the two budgets into a non-DLGF and a tax supported fund budget this year. We just have one budget that we passed. So we know we passed two.
I think we passed them separately because this one, I believe it was the
We just didn't want
21st of
to.
November was the first time it was
Okay.
presented.
I think we did pass these
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yeah, this is just
these are
amending for the three funds that were
Yeah.
neglected to put on that
Yeah,
the first document.
Okay, I think you're right. And we
Yeah.
just requested that we not do that going
Going
forward,
forward.
right? Okay.
yeah. And then my question would be, like, so the non-reverting parks capital for capital outlays and construction, like, do we know what those projects are for? Were those presented in the initial budget or?
Jared's going to need to speak on that. I'm trying to think if those were presented when the initial budget was brought forth. I don't remember if they
And
were.
would the spending on this be brought forth? Would this be a scenario where we would have the request brought to us? I mean, I feel like well, I don't know, Jared, what is this for?
This was presented in several drafts of the budget along the way. I don't know why it fell out at any point in between. This is for active capital projects that are still ongoing that wouldn't receive an encumbrance. Period.
Is there anything specific that it's?
This
Is
was for.
this just a blank check for $300,000 since we're not outlining what exactly it's going to go for? Or
It's associated with active construction projects going on with the rail trail, pickleball courts, and the trailhead project.
you don't remember why it was taken out of one of the,
I think it was just an error. It was just an
It
accident.
was several emails asking for it to be put back in along the way.
So forgive me for for spending too much time on this, Jared, but $300,000, do you know how much is for rail trail, how much is for pickleball, and how much is for trailhead?
If I look through my notes, I could give you that breakout. Yeah, this was several months ago.
I mean, it is a first reading, so I'm certainly happy to move it along, but I mean, I'd like to know what the breakdown is on that. I know, yeah, I'd like to know, you know, just, I mean, for example, well, I'd just like to know what it's going for.
I can give you that for next meeting.
Perfect. This is a public hearing. I have proof of publication. At this point, I'll open the public hearing. Are there any questions or any comments from the public? Anyone who would like to comment? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing.
Oh, we got one.
Oh, we got one.
Oh, sorry. Come on up. If you would please just come up and state your name and address and. I need to
Good evening,
I
Town
need to
Council.
reopen the hearing or no?
Yes, please.
Yeah, all right, again, proof of publication. I'll reopen the hearing. Sorry.
My name is Brent Hartman. I live at 9407 Green Thread Lane. Relative to the subject of the Green Trail, we sent some requests for public information. Our question is, relative to the expansion of the rail trail along Green Thread and through Spring Knoll, there are 3 or 4 tracks that are platted to the Spring Knoll Property Owners Association. Those tracks that are platted on abandoned railroad tracks are where the rail trail is laying on, in, or in proximity to. Expanding from the 9.5 feet to 12 feet of asphalt and 2 feet on each side would constitute a taking of our platted land. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. I wasn't prepared. So my question to the city council and to Parks and Rec, we've asked them several meetings and times, is if Spring Knoll owns the platted land that the trail is on, we're asking for documentation as to rights and privileges that the city has to expand the trail on our platted land. Fair question. We'd just like the question of law and understanding, because I'm sure the right thing can be done, but we are seeing an increase in traffic. We're seeing an increase in risk to the homeowners and to our insurance and to our quality of life. And we'd like to be involved in that process. And having been ignored with our questions to date, we'd bring it to the council's attention. There's a plan to expand in the taking, and we need to understand that, we feel, respectfully. Questions?
I'm just curious, you said we, are you speaking for yourself? Or are you like an officer for the homeowners association? Are you speaking in an official capacity for Spring Knoll in any way?
I'm a past president. I'm not speaking in an official capacity, except that I'm a homeowner vested in anything the homeowner has as common area and has a vested
No,
interest in
that's
that
fine. I
common
just
area.
didn't know if you were kind of representing the whole.
Fair, we are adjacent to the trail, and there is some drainage easements and some drainage rights. And again, we already are seeing an increase in traffic and risk and a change in quality of life when you start connecting to other communities. And police cars coming down the rail trail at high rate of speed, and intersections in there, we just have some serious concerns.
So can we, I don't know, Jared, if Jared would be the person to answer this, or Lance, or somebody just.
Lance, probably.
Lance, Director of Public Works. I'm not overly familiar without doing a little bit of research on the parcel status here, but I would look to your council to see the applicability of this as a public question on the budget matter. Certainly it is a valid inquiry and I think merits some discussion, but I don't know if that's perhaps Ms. Harris could guide you on this, whether this is the proper forum for that question right now.
I just made a note of that. Yeah, as well, that it doesn't really pertain to the item that we have before us, but certainly the individual could submit some extra commentary to the town council or request that something be considered an update or something that would be more specific. We tried to limit our public comment to actual items on the agenda, and since this is budgetary in nature, we've sort of limited that No worries. It gets very confusing when we hear like about the projects, but
To our trail and the expansion of it and the expense involved.
yeah.
I do know that there's a Freedom of Information Act request on this. I was copied on an email, I think yesterday, from these folks. I would love to have an update on where that information is, how, if we've got a timeline on when that information will get, when we'll be able to provide that information to them, as well as making sure that further expansion doesn't happen until we do so.
Absolutely. Would you like that update right now with this matter or separate?
Either.
Okay. Yeah,
I'm fine with it. Yeah.
Mr. and Mrs. Hartman, we received your records request in the middle of November, requesting the documents associated with the widening project. We satisfied that, and then there was additional comments for more clarity, and we are working with our previous park board attorney to find those documents for you. So as I mentioned in the email, we won't begin the project until this is all resolved. But I do understand with the Carter properties, Spring Knoll, as well as Carter Station and the lakes, there was several discrepancies and errors with the filing of the plat. And when we pursued the widening of the rail trail, we were assured by our park board attorney that this had all been resolved long ago. So we're just collecting that information, and dating back to the 80s, 90s, it's not readily available electronically. So we're manually digging in files. But we are actively working on that, and we'll get it resolved before we break ground in that area.
Thank you.
I got a quick question, and I have no idea if this has anything to do with this question, but I'm a little concerned that is widening this trail going to really change the quality of life and who can go up and down that trail? I mean, I don't understand what's the correlation. I understand taking someone else's property, but is it really going to change how the trail works?
So right at this time, the trail in that section is 10 foot. So essentially we're adding 1 foot of pavement to each side. And that is just for safety. We're seeing more numbers than we had on the rail trail in the 90s or 2000s. And if you experience the Southern Rail Trail expansion we just did at 15 feet, it's quite nice to have elbow room for cyclists to go by and carriages and other pedestrians on the trail. So certainly as our community continues to grow, our pathways and our trail system will have to keep up with that growth. So it's always been the plan to widen the rail trail, especially as we look to connect to other communities throughout Boone County with the regional Big Four rail trail.
All right, so this is one last dumb question here. So if you're going to do it on both sides, a foot on each side, is that just an addition, or are you repaving the whole thing?
We are milling and repaving as well, resurfacing. So
Okay.
in that area, that has been around for over 20 years, is at end of life. So to have a problem-free rail trail from start to finish as we connect to other communities and begin to have that user load, I think is very advantageous. And with the award of the Next Level Trails grant for 1.8 million, we have the opportunity to use our 2019 bond funds to make that happen. So it's really using all of our available tools for these specific trail projects, which is one of our biggest amenities in our park system.
Jared, you're saying that connecting the other communities, I assume you're talking about Lebanon and Whitestown?
Yes.
Is that correct? And so how wide are those trails generally?
They vary as well throughout the system. Our direct connection to Whitestown at 400 and Whitestown Road, our trail will be 12 feet, which is the minimum of our uniform trail once this widening is finished, along with the 2 expansions. And Whitestown will be 10 feet. So again, with construction costs being so crazy as they have the last couple of years, we at first wanted to do 15 feet as well, but had to scale that back. And I believe Whitestown had to do the same with their trail expansion.
So in most cases, the scaling back has nothing to do with property purchased on both sides. It's literally construction costs.
Correct. That is the reason for our scaling back from 15 down to 12 as we looked at the northern expansion and the widening.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right. Thank you all.
Cindy, I just have a couple of questions, maybe. And I could be reading this wrong, but I guess I'm trying to understand it. So this is obviously the 2022 budget and then a proposed 2023 budget. And my question would be like, We had a 2022 town hall lease fund for $668,000. In 2023, it's zero. We had parks bonds for 1.2 in 2022. Now it's 188. Same thing with some other bonds in DPW.
Well, like bond 419, or fund 419 for that bond, it's because dollars are being used, balances are lowering. And so, yeah, and then we only budget what can be spent out of there. That's for 419. The other one, the lease, can you tell me what that fund number is?
Well, I guess I'm just looking at, I mean, there's park impact fees for parks, capital outlays, buildings, 218 last year, zero this year. We just heard capital outlays later on in this document, but there's also a $300,000 request as well.
Well, park impact fees have a very, there are only specific types of projects that can be used on. So I know at one point in time, we had gone a few years and not being able to utilize those funds at all. So those are very specific, which Jared could probably explain it better, but those are very specific to certain areas and certain projects that they can be used for. So we may not budget for those every year.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's, it's a first reading. So I'm certainly happy to get this moving along from my perspective. But I think that unfortunately where I am with this is I feel like I'm back looking at the other budget from the perspective of, capital outlays, equipment. There's not a lot of, we don't know exactly what some of these things are. I mean, I get some of it's just going to say, pretty general responses, but, I look at wastewater, capital outlays, infrastructure went from 1.1 last year to 984 this year. And we don't need to get into what that's going for right now, but I am interested as it relates to why some of these funds would have relatively sizable balances in 2022 or requests in 2022 and be at zero now, and what some of this stuff is going to be used for. I mean, we kind of earmarked contractual services, for example, in the economic development or in the planning department. There's Zionsville TIF, contractual services. Is that going to the RDC? Is that stuff for the planning department? Do we need to understand that? I feel like I've got a lot of questions about what's going on with this, and I'm certainly happy to send those to you so we can.
That'd be great.
Figure it out.
Yeah. If you could just send those over and then I can research it.
Any other questions for Cindy? I'm going to close the. You're going to say something, Heather?
Well, I was just curious. I mean, I may just be reading this wrong. I'm not exactly sure I understand what this document's doing, but for example, like in the coronavirus relief fund, that was one that stuck out to me. It shows that we had zero budgeted in 2022. So does this not include money that the town council would come back and appropriate
Like an
at a
additional
later date?
appropriation?
Because we did spend quite a bit out of that. I think we spent like almost $600,000, for example. And I see several examples of that I know where we spent that that aren't showing up. I also see a lot of different positions or changes in compensation for positions. So I just think we might need to better understand that. But I think it would include, I think we would go back and amend our budget number for the current year to include additional appropriations, right?
Yeah, I think how this was initially set up, the original budget amount was taken and didn't take into consideration any additionals, which 176 would have been strictly additionals.
Yeah, it's interesting because the 2022, like on that example, and I just know because I remember writing it, in that particular line item, it does show reflected updated balance, which includes the second allocation that the town received, which I didn't know we had received, but apparently we have, because it's showing now a fund balance of 5,793,000. I think our last fund balance was like 2.6 million because we only had half of the allocation that the feds were, had allocated to the town. So we must have received the second.
I believe it came in either July or August.
But I still think we'd go back and amend the 2022 budget number because you got to pick up all those additional appropriations to accurately reflect that money was spent so that you can correspond to the balance, for example, left in the fund. Because if you don't have those additional appropriations, then the balance is going to be incorrect.
So if we pass a
Or
budget,
potentially incorrect. This one is not.
if we pass a budget, Heather, with no spending in the budget cycle, so this would have been in 2021, and then appropriated those monies in 2022 for that spend, is that then technically a part of the budget? That appropriation gets moved over into the budget, correct?
Do you want to explain it? Tim's giving me his look that he gives me.
Tim Berry with Crow. So how that would reflect is your original budget that you passed would be the original budget that you passed. Any additional appropriations that would be done subsequent in after the passage of the budget or in the actual calendar year of that budget would then be looked at as an additional appropriation and augment the original budgeted amount.
Got it. So this is probably showing the original past budget, not the augmented budget with the additional appropriation, correct?
We did not have a chance to review that when it was presented originally, but yes, I believe that was the original intent, was to present a comparison from the original budget to what was going to be originally budgeted for 2023. And again, you already approved that document at the meeting where the budget was approved, with the exception of those three funds that were not that were omitted.
Yeah.
Tim, why were they omitted? Was that the mistake that they should not have been omitted, or someone made a strategic decision that to balance the budget, they needed to be omitted?
This is not to balance any budget. These are non-DLGF funds, have separate revenue sources. And so they're separate from a balancing standpoint of what you were doing with respect to the general fund budget. So that's not related. I believe that it was done in error. I was not a part of that, so I can't really speak to the prior CFO's decision-making for what happened there.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Cindy? I'm going to close the public, reclose the public hearing. I think so from my perspective on this, man, I feel like there are a lot of questions about this for me, and I'm going to send this to Cindy and Jared to understand more about some of the stuff on there as well. You know, I want to make sure this is just another example. We got to make sure we get this right. I mean, I feel like the council has worked very, very hard to make sure that we've been in communication with the State Board of Accounts to make sure we're doing things that we're supposed to be doing to improve from where we were. And I think this is just another example. We just have to understand where the money's going, why it's going. And I'm less concerned about why it was omitted and more concerned about moving forward and getting it right from there. So, yeah, I mean, I'll send you guys some questions about that. Hopefully we can get those answered. I would move to introduce ordinance 2022-30 on first reading. Second by Councilor Choi. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same
No.
sign.
No.
All right. Motion passes 5 in favor, 2 opposed. Up next is consideration of an ordinance amending the Town of Zionsville fee schedule. This is ordinance 2022-31. This is first reading. Mike Dale.
Good evening. Tonight you have an ordinance that would
You wanna
add
introduce yourself?
Mike Dale, Director of Community and Economic Development. I'm sorry. Currently, the planning fees don't have a home. Last month, the Plan Commission and Council agreed to remove the planning fees from the planning chapter, zoning chapter. And tonight, there's an ordinance to relocate those fees into your overall fee schedule. The Plan Commission gave a favorable recommendation last month to this process. A town council last month also agreed this would be an appropriate process to take those fees out of the zoning chapter and place them in a separate section of the town code. The problem being that any amendment to the town code or town zoning ordinance, that is, or town zoning chapter would involve a public hearing with the Plan Commission. So, and it's really not necessary to involve the Plan Commission and change the fee schedule, especially since in essence it's your fee schedule. So to really streamline the process, what we're proposing to do and hoping to accomplish tonight is to put those fees into the town's regular fee schedule. That would enable the town council to make revisions as whenever and as easily as possible throughout the course of a year. So that's in your ordinance tonight.
And no fee changes, correct?
Correct. There's been no changes to the fee structure whatsoever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any other questions for Mike?
I move to accept on first reading.
Second.
First by Counselor Choi, second by Counselor Melton. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Up next is other matters. Are there any other matters councilors would like to bring up?
Just make a comment, and this isn't directly related just to my last vote, but clearly there's technical issues, and I realize that's a first reading introduction for us to pass, but I just think there's a question of process and appropriateness of how we conduct business and how the town does business and how we communicate with one another. It's imperative that this body sets an expectation and a standard of how business is brought before this body, and it's probably not pretty for folks trying to watch this from the audience or from home, and it's not efficient. It's often dysfunctional, and I just thought there were way too many questions that we had not maybe enough preparation. And I think Cindy for being put in a tough situation as always to come handle this. Obviously, our CFO left today. There wasn't leadership here today to help present this to us. It wasn't pre-communicated to us in an appropriate way. And so I guess I'm just saying no, because it just is not the appropriate way we need to do business in this town. It wasn't ready. And I know we still have time because it was a first reading amendment, but and we'll have time to pass it. But I just want to express that, you know, when you're bringing business before this body, there needs to be a higher expectation of preparedness and communication. And I realize there are reasons in this particular case why that didn't happen, but I'm not expressing it as frustration. I don't think my emotions necessarily matter. I just think it's concerning to the town that this is sometimes how we do business. So I would just leave it at that.
Yeah, I don't disagree. In fact, I would even, you know, Mike, even on this, on the fee structure, if we could get the original and the red line, just to make sure, again, to Councilor Trailer's point, you know, there were no changes. I believe, you know, I saw a lot of that stuff in the red line in the first time, but, or the last meeting, but, you know, we've got procedures that we follow with the council, are supposed to be followed with the council, where everything is supposed to be delivered to the town council, to Amy the Monday prior to the next town council meeting. In addition, there's also a narrative that is requested, that accompanies each request from whoever is putting anything on the agenda. And I've mentioned Janice has done a really good job with that the last couple of meetings, and I think it's made our job easier because we have that information. I think that we've probably, to Councilor or Vice President Burke's point, we've slipped on some of that. We haven't held everybody accountable to the same standards. And I would just say moving forward, anything that we get that anyone wants to have on the town council agenda, please make sure Amy has everything the Monday prior to the town council meeting by 4 o'clock. I could say close of business, but some people leave at 3 and some people leave at 5. So 4 o'clock the Monday before the town council meeting. And with that, let's get an accompanying narrative for what the desires are for the legislation that's on there or whatever's on the agenda, so that we have as detailed information as Janice has prepared for us. Again, significantly easier to move this stuff along if we have those details And to Vice President Burke's point, less questions. So anything else from other counselors?
Yeah, I just have one thing. I want to piggyback on Counselor Garrett. So the two things that my constituents, if you guys know, I'm in District 4, goes all the way to the village at 6th Street, 6th Street West. So two things, the Gateway Project, obviously would like an update. I think I was originally on that group, but I haven't heard anything in a year or so. The other one is the form-based zoning. So Mike, could you just give an update to the town council of what the timeline is and how that's going to impact the town?
Yes, Mike Dale again with Council Community and Economic Development. Right now, the Economic Development Department and other staff with CED are reviewing the draft form-based code prepared by the consultant. We're in about the middle of the document, about chapter 5 right now, meeting weekly to go through it. We're going through it very carefully with the consultant and with staff. We anticipate this process concluding around February, perhaps, hopefully, and presenting the document to the Plan Commission for a public hearing in March. So we would hope to present the document therefore to you probably in April.
Thank you. Appreciate that. It's the first time we've gotten an update on any of that kind of stuff. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I will say just for counselors, I requested that process be postponed for 90 days till we got through budget season, until we got through redistricting, and not to any fault of Mike's. That was certainly, that didn't happen. And I was very clear with the folks who sent me the emails that we are too busy to be heard by the end of the year to get this thing done, and requested that they wait until January to get council input so that we could be engaged and involved in the process to help move this along in a more simple fashion. That request didn't happen, and I will tell every counselor on here, if I'm president of council next year, this will not be on the April agenda until every counselor has every question they have answered, and or any modifications that you guys would like to have made to the form-based code as well. So that was certainly something that I attempted to have done early on, and it didn't happen.
I got one question. I see Lance back here. I was just gonna see if we get an update on the roundabout and the road improvements down West Oak Street, including the sewer connection. I apologize. I see you're on your way out and you're ready to go. But talking about my constituents and everybody that's concerned with that improvement, I just want to kind of make sure we're on track. If we're not, if we can put out some expectations.
Nope, we are on track. On our website, both phase 1 and phase 2 sewer extension projects are kept updated as phases and milestones are achieved. Phase 1 sewer extensions are expected to be concluded in January. And we are currently under design on phase 2, which should go to construction later in 2023. The roundabout is currently out for public bid, with a public bid opening this Thursday.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Appreciate your work.
Perfect. Anything else?
Make a motion to adjourn.
First by Councilor Garrett. Second by Vice President Burke. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed. The next regular town council meeting scheduled for Monday, December 19, 2022 at 8 a.m. in the Zionsville Town Hall Council Chambers. Please note a special town council meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, December 7th, 2022 at 7:30 a.m. also in the Town Hall Council Chambers. Final notice of both meetings will be posted in compliance with the Indiana Open Door Law.